All right, here we are tonight, Wrestling Philosophy Podcast. I've got a special guest for you tonight. It's four-time All-American Kyler Slade from the Ohio State University Wrestling Club. Kyler, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. So here's my angle with you, Kyler. Obviously, I want you to tell your wrestling story. I want you to get it out there. In my opinion, it's a story that can relate to so many guys and now girls that have opportunities that they don't even know anything about. And when I opened up, I gave a quick intro about you. Four-time All-American, national runner-up, the Ohio State University Wrestling Club. And I want to dive into that, but I honestly just wanted to get you on because I think your story it will just resonate with so many people.
Yeah, man. I think starting in high school, I would say my freshman and sophomore year, I was kind of brought into wrestling, kind of being the punching bag in practice and stuff, which was a good spot for growth. But then like my junior and senior year, I wasn't too big. I was wrestling like 145 and kind of fluctuating within there, and really started to focus on wrestling. And I think senior year is when it all just took off. And I was kind of like that one year I think I did really well in state qualifier in Ohio, and was one match away from placing. And I think after that, I really wanted to continue because I love wrestling, still love it. Still helping out with the club at Ohio State. But I wanted to continue in college, and I didn't know really how to do that. And Jeremiah Weber, my coach in high school, love that man. He really tried to get me to go Division I because he had, peak amount of confidence in me, and I really wanted to do, Division I wrestling. And as we were talking about earlier before we started, a lot of kids think it's Division I or bust. And I think I probably was looking at one school, one small Division I school, didn't even visit. I really kind of wanted to stay local, and I wanted to continue wrestling somehow. And ultimately, I chose Ohio State. I went to Ohio State, and really kind of found the club by luck. They actually weren't even an official club; they were a sports organization at Ohio State, and kind of walked by the room, saw it like at the RPAC, their big workout facility for the students and everything, and I saw there was a mat in there, and I saw some people wrestling, and I stopped in and told them that I was a little bit of a wrestler, and I met Coach David Rourke. He's still the coach at Ohio State for the club, and that was it from there, man. I started wrestling and practicing, and he told me about opportunities to compete, and we compete under the NCWA. That's their own entity, separate from like the NCAA. You still get eligibility and everything, but then I started competing, and I did it for 5 years. So it was a great path.
All right, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning because I've had the privilege of seeing you from the beginning. I'll tell you. Well, let me ask you. So, did you start? Was your freshman year your first year wrestler?
So I started wrestling in seventh grade.
Seventh grade. Okay.
I didn't make the basketball team at Shanahan, and some of my high school buddies like Nate Hall and Blake Young and all them. They convinced me to start wrestling, and that's where that all started. I started in seventh grade.
Okay, so at the Olentangy High School, the original Olentangy High School, the Braves Lewis Center, I remember seeing you, and I want to say you were like 113 pounds your freshman year. I mean, was that your weight class? 113.
I was at 113.
Yeah, and I remember it was the first time I ever met your dad, and we're sitting. I think it was at Marysville, if I remember right. We're sitting up at the top, and I looked over and I saw your dad sitting there, and I said, well, which one of these guys do you claim? And he said, well, I've got two of them. One of them's down there right now. He's the little guy down there right now. So I remember you being small. And Kyler, I mean this with all respect, because I love you, man. I do. You weren't very good.
I'll agree with you on that one, man. I was not very good.
I just remember thinking, okay, we got a long way to go with this one, right? But your passion and everything, like you said, you maybe you felt like you were the punching bag in the room for those first couple years, but I got to see the development that you put in through your dedication in the sport. And like you said, fast forward to that senior year where things really clicked. And this, and I don't want to gloss over too much of this, because again, it can resonate and should resonate with a lot of high school wrestlers. The high school tournament starts tomorrow in the state of Ohio.
It's a great time.
And there are, I mean, that one comes top of mind right now. That first time qualifier was on the bubble, and he made it just like you. And in 2015, there was 5 Olentangy Braves that made it. 2 of them ended up being state runner-up that year, so they were like the anchor. It was Nate Hall,
Yeah.
and it was Chris Crum.
Yeah.
And then you and your twin brother Connor, who were, Connor was what, he was 220, I think, that
Yep.
year, and you by that time, I think you had been
170. Yeah.
170.
Yep.
And then the tie-in there is my son Xander was, I think it was 138 that year.
Yeah.
And so 5 of you guys go off to the Schottenstein Center, the state tournament.
Oh yeah.
And why don't you, so I've set you up, right? So I've kind of walked you through memory lane. What did I miss? What stands out to you as your growth as a wrestler from that time at 113, that little guy, to before you stepped on that first mat at the Schottenstein Center in 2015?
Man, the first thing that comes to mind is I faced some adversity my junior year in high school, and I'm sure you remember. I actually fractured my back playing football, and it was just that stress fracture, and I played all summer on it, and actually kept me out of football my junior. Like I said, I was 145, so it kept me out of football my junior year, basically the entire season, and kind of bled into wrestling. And I think from that point, I really had to make a decision, because I think when I envisioned going to college, I wanted to do a sport. There's very little chance I was going to be football. I was 145, wasn't really laying out very many people. I was the one getting laid out, and I think I loved wrestling, and so I had to make the difficult decision of kind of choosing one or the other, and I chose to stick with wrestling and only choose that my senior year. And I didn't play football my senior year. I didn't even play with Connor, and which was really difficult for me. And I didn't get to play with Jacob and Zachary, who came on their freshman year. That was huge for me. It was a really big decision, and I focused on wrestling. And I think a combination between that adversity and just I felt like I had to make a choice. And I focused on wrestling, and also the combination of when Jeremiah Weber became my coach sophomore year, he really he was a mentor for me, and he still is today. I've been very lucky with the coaches that have come into my life that I've wrestled for. I've been extremely lucky. And I would say those 2 things were the turning point for me. Jeremiah got me going, really kind of changed my mindset in terms of, just making me a better man, honestly, and a better competitor. And he was really took the time to work with me. And then junior year, when I fractured my back, I made that decision. And I think from that point right there, that was a turning point for me. I focused on wrestling, did freestyle and Greco, all of a sudden I'm starting senior year and I'm winning matches like easy. It wasn't really like that was not happening junior year. I was out most of the season anyway. So, but then I excelled my senior year and I did really well. And yeah, I was on the bubble, made it to the state tournament, everything, and that's all history from there.
Okay, so I got to ask you. So I mentioned Connor. You mentioned um, Zach and Jacob. So you and Connor are twins, and then the younger brothers are twins. So it's two sets of twins in the Slade household. We joke. Us wrestling parents joke. How did the Slades ever do that? Your parents? How'd they ever handle that? But you guys are great kids. I know that. So I guess my point is, I want to back up and just ask you. I'm just curious. With twins, you and Connor, what's the mindset when your mind flips, when you make that flip as a wrestler? And obviously Connor is very decorated as a football player, and went on to be like Mr. Ohio. Like, I mean, he had like all this accolades, right? As a football player, and also state qualifier with you. Does his mind go along with yours? What is there a twin thing? How does that work?
Oh man, I I feel like there is a twin thing. I think when my mindset switched, I mean, me and him both like we're really close. All four of us are really close, but especially me and Connor. And like when I had to sit out and I had to make a choice, I think he really like felt for me because he knows that like out of everything in the world, I would have loved. I wanted to play football with him my senior year so bad, and I think, but when that mindset switched to wrestling, he's not much of like he is not much of a fan of wrestling himself because I mean he did it and he loved competing, but as soon as he was done, he was pretty much done because he loved football so much. And I think, but my like when I switched to wrestling, like he was also all in with me though. Like we would stay after practice together uh, and get extra work in. I mean, he never hesitated to help me out, even though he may not have been the one getting the extra work. He got it in too, but I spent a lot of extra time after practice. That was a big point for Coach Weber is getting those extra reps in. He was there for me, and when my mindset switched there, he was there with me too. So I mean, it's definitely a twin thing. He was there.
So fast forward to state tournament, and I want to get back to the experience of the state tournament in a second. I want to get back there because again, I think we've got there are young men tonight that will not be able to sleep because they're going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to walk out of that tunnel for the first time, just like you did. I want to get to that, but let's fast forward to that blood round in 2015. Okay. I'm going to give you my recollection as a fan, as a wrestling parent of what I saw. And it goes to the twin thing in my mind, Kyler. And if I'm totally off base, just tell me I'm off base. You were the better wrestler. Your brother was 220, had himself a very good draw, had himself a very good tournament. You both were destined to place in that tournament, in my opinion. You both make it to the blood round, and I believe you were both wrestling at the same time. Is that right?
Same exact time. Yeah.
Okay. So we had a suite that year, and I'm watching, and of course, cheering and praying and jumping up and down and hoping and all that kind of stuff. And it seemed to me in my mind that both of your matches turned at about the same time, and you both lost at about the same time. Why? Why is it a twin thing? You can't be better than him. He can't be better than you, or you both have to experience this, a little bit of heartbreak together. What's going on there? To me, it just seemed like it had to happen that way.
I think it had to, man. And if I remember right, Connor was actually so my recollection, I remember wrestling Keegan Driscoll. And I remember his name because he beat me in districts. He's a tough kid. I think he went on to wrestle in college as well, Division One.
Hilliard, right? Hilliard.
Yep.
Yep.
Hilliard Darby, I think.
Okay. Yep.
But I wrestled him in my blood round match, and I already lost to him in districts. And that was the match, man. I wanted to win so bad, and it was a close one. But if I remember right, Connor was actually winning his match.
He was
winning his match against a stud. A stud in 220 that was projected to win, and I think he got upset at some point, and that's how him and Connor ended up facing each other. But Connor was winning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy was. I mean, he was down in the dumps, and Connor was winning. And I think my match ended before his. I lost. I was heartbroken. But I immediately turned my attention to Connor's match because I wanted him to win so bad, even though like I felt like I was, like I was the one that like loved wrestling and I deserved to be on the podium and I worked so hard for it. Like I wanted him to win really, really bad. And I remember seeing that match flip as soon as I was done.
Yeah.
And he lost, I think by pin.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it just had to happen. I don't know. It's crazy how it works out, and I think me and him it just makes us closer. We grow together in those types of ways too. Like we both experienced that heartbreak, and it's definitely emotional too. Like especially being there, that state tournament is like nothing else you'll ever experience. It was heartbreaking, but we've grown so much from that moment as well, and it just had to happen like that. Twins do twin things, it just happens.
Yeah, and I'm glad you validated that because that's what it seemed like to me. It was just like, oh well, of course, that's just going to be the way that this thing ends.
Yep.
That's going to be the way that this ends. And luckily, as a fan base, we got to witness, two of our teammates go on and be on that raised platform on Saturday night. Didn't quite turn out very well for either of those guys, but state runner-up ain't bad. All right, so talk to me about the Schottenstein Center tomorrow. As this is being recorded, by the time this comes out, the state tournament will be history. But as this is being recorded tomorrow, there will be people like yourself that are seniors that have never stepped foot on the floor of the Schottenstein Center. Maybe they've been up in the stands. Maybe they've been there since they were a kid watching it. What is that? What is your recollection of what that place was like for you as a wrestler?
I'm going to be honest. It's pretty easy to recall because it's something that like you don't forget. I remember walking out on that floor, and I believe it was the day before because we did weigh-ins. Like I remember walking out there and hanging out on the mat and looking around the Schottenstein, and it's a shell shock. Like I remember being told, "Don't look up in the stands because it kind of gives you stage fright, I guess." But it's special, man. The echo of the roars and the boos and the cheering and stuff like that. That's something you're gonna remember for the rest of your life. And my senior year was the first time that I stepped out there. So I wasn't one of those guys like Nate or Chris or Cody, or Xander, like all those guys. I've been to the state tournament multiple times. Senior year is my first time, and it was a little bit of a shell shock. And I've actually watched my first round match numerous times, especially within like the year or two after that, because I lost pretty handily to a kid from Steubenville, and it was. I remember that match just being definitely like I said, a shell shock. It was like the big stage, like you were there, and I knew I wanted, like, I wrestled hard, but it hits you. It hits you when you walk out there, man. It's just different. It's way different, and I think you kind of get after that first match when you get out of the way, like most tournaments, though, you're locked in, and but it's something that I'm positive none of those guys that are stepping out there for their first time, especially in their senior year, they're not going to forget it.
Yeah. All right. So let's fast forward. I love the story about Ohio State and walking past the room and seeing some guys in there wrestling. What I didn't know, and I want to talk a little bit more about this. What I didn't know was it wasn't. It was a. What'd you call it? It wasn't the club. It wasn't the official club. It was what? Well,
Yeah, they were a sports organization.
okay.
So there's at Ohio State at least there's different levels to, especially sports clubs. So uh, there's there's over 1,000 student organizations, and that's what the wrestling club happened to be. And actually, about 4 or 5 years before I got there, they were an official sports club at Ohio State, and they fell out of compliance with um, the uh, the club executive board, and it kind of fell down to just as a student organization. And that's when I joined, and uh, I believe that part of my legacy at Ohio State, like throw the 4-time All-American and everything out the window, was leaving that club the year that I left. They became an official club again, which is one of my. I'm extremely proud of that because now their exposure is much larger and they got a bigger budget. It's gaining a lot of traction with a lot of people on campus, like guys who um, kind of ended up just like me, like coming to Ohio State without knowing that it was even there. So, but yeah, they're an official sports club now. So
Okay. So explain to us what that means. And everybody knows the Ohio State University. Everybody knows how good the Ohio State University varsity wrestling program is. And you mentioned governing boards and all this. So what's the hierarchy? And I believe that in the past that there have been wrestlers that have leapt from the club to the varsity level. Am I right there?
yeah, you're right. And one of them was almost me. I yeah, there's been guys and vice versa actually. We've had guys jump from the club to the varsity. Our coach Rourke, he's in contact with Coach Ryan. Um, Tom's a great guy. I love Tom Ryan. Everyone loves him. And there's been guys that have jumped from the club to the varsity and have done really well. Um, and there's different factors as to why they're not on the varsity initially, but there's been guys that have jumped from the club to the varsity team, and then vice versa. There's been guys that maybe the commitment of the varsity was too much, too heavy, and maybe the outlook wasn't so great for them. Maybe there's studs. You got Kyle Snyder, Colin Moore, Nathan Tomasello. Like maybe there's guys in front of them that are just going to be there because they're that good. There's guys that have fallen, coming from. I don't even want to say falling, like because that's these guys want to choose a route that's better for them. And so guys will come from the varsity and they'll come to the club, and they succeed. And there's actually one that comes to mind right now is Parker Watson. He's actually competing. He just competed today. I think he's at 174 for our club team, but he was on the varsity for a year, and he came to the club, and he's doing really well. Like he's school matters a lot to him, and not that school doesn't matter to all his varsity guys, but based on his class load and stuff, and what he wanted to be doing, and his position on the varsity, he wanted to be more competitive and have other goals. Like our club has a national tournament versus if you're starting on varsity, you could go to the NCWAs. But he wanted to compete more. He wanted to compete and not just be in the practice room. He wanted to be competing out on a big stage, and our club was the way to do that for him. And he's doing really well right now. So hoping he can end up getting on the podium this year too.
Yeah, so you mentioned, I mean, again, as this is being recorded tonight, today was the first day of the national tournament. It's in Allen, Texas. I think it's been there for a while, and if I remember right, I think it's going to move to Vegas maybe next year, something like that.
Yeah.
But you've been to Allen, Texas. You've been on that state. There is a national tournament. It's not all just, and when I say club, I don't want to kill this point, Kyler. I don't, but I want it to sink into to big, thick-headed people like me. Club doesn't mean that Kyler still he's got this class load, like you said. He wants to be a Buckeye, and he's got a little bit of an itch, so he feels like he needs to go, check, roll around with somebody, maybe do some single legs and some hit some high crotches here and there, and then you guys shake hands and that was fun. I'll see you next week. This is competitive. The national list, NCWA list of clubs that are there. I mean, I want to say there's probably 50 teams there at least.
There's at least, I think there's over 100, and it depends on the size of the club. Yeah, man, there's a lot.
And different governing rules. We don't need to get into that, but basically, there was one year I remember watching you. You had the same guy in your weight class, so two guys from the same team on the same weight class can enter into the tournament and be in the national tournament, right?
Yeah. And you said, like with the rules and stuff, like there's only one guy that scores for your team, but the NCWA is, to me, it was the ultimate opportunity for as many guys to compete that were in similar situations as me. That it gives everyone the opportunity to compete, and it's extremely competitive. And I think the beauty of it is, like, on my end, it was extremely competitive. But for some other guys, like you were saying, like you can pop in the room and you can roll around once a week with us. Like it's open to everybody. And the beauty of it is it is what you make it. Like I made it extremely competitive, and it's an extremely competitive organization. But we have guys that all sorts of different experience levels and like competition levels as well. Like we have guys that just come in and practice to help out the guys that are competing. We have people that stop in twice a semester to feel just being on a mat again. And then we have guys who are state placers in other states that have come to Ohio State from out of state, and they want to compete with us. And I mean, ultimately, like we do really well as a team. Yeah, man, it's really what you make it, and it's that was the beauty of being a part of the NCWA and being part of club wrestling.
So you mentioned the budget. The budget got a little bit bigger as in my mind as you kind of went up another tier. I've seen the gear; it's official. I've seen the swag; it's official. The social media is out there. Like I said, this is not just some, hey, let's get together and roll around. And again, you just said you can if you want to. I love the opportunity for that. But this is a legit organization that is connected to the varsity program. And so you can really, really scratch that itch if you want to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And like I said, we were talking about guys that have gone from the club to the varsity. I was actually one of those guys that wanted that opportunity, and Coach Ryan gave it to me. I guess to start my freshman year, when I got to Ohio State, I saw those guys wrestling in the room, and I, got to talking to them, and I started competing all of a sudden. I think I was practicing probably twice a week my freshman year, and I was competing on the weekends. And then I became an All-American that year. And all of a sudden, my coach is like, you could win that national tournament if you really wanted to. And I really wanted to. And so sophomore year, I went, and at the beginning of the year, my goal was to walk on to the varsity that year. And I trained for it all summer, extremely hard. And I was probably in the best shape of my life. And I went to the varsity, and I was there for probably about a month and a half or so, and I got cut from the team.
Hmm.
And that's when like Colin Moore was there. That's when Miles Martin was there. It's when Kyle was there. All they were studs.
Mhm.
And so I got cut from the team, and Tom Ryan told me to go win that national tournament for the NCWA and come back. And that year I ended up finishing second. And honestly, at that point, my best opportunity wasn't to try to go back to the varsity. It was to try to get that title for for the NCWA again next year. So um, yeah, man, that's how that played out.
So the opportunities again, I guess I just want to hammer it. Somebody like yourself that grows progressively in the sport, especially in the high school ranks, it clicks for you. Maybe your senior year, but for in your case, absolutely your senior year, and you quote unquote fall in love with the sport. That's what we like to say, right? When did it happen for you?
Yeah,
You're in love with the sport. You realize that you're going to be a Buckeye academically, right? This is where you're going to go to your school, and you just happen to stumble upon somebody wrestling, some other people wrestling, and you were able to still continue that love for the sport. Where you sit right now, what would you say to all of the hundreds of kids that are like you in high school right now that think, number one, it's D1 or bust, and number two, there's no way I'm good enough to go D1?
yeah, I would say to them that opportunity to, I mean, for one, it's not D1 or bust, as I found out going to college. Um, we like I said, it's there's that opportunity to compete is out there, and the NCWA offers that opportunity to everybody. And I guess I should mention that so a lot of the schools that are in the NCWA are there's a couple different there's two different divisions. Division one NCAA or NCWA teams. Um, their school doesn't have a varsity team. So some of these schools that they go to, um, for instance, like Toledo, the University of Toledo doesn't have a varsity team. Their club team is their varsity team, and they've got great funding. They've got their own room, and a lot of SEC schools like Clemson,
Mhm.
a lot of SEC schools that you don't see, like you see them on TV playing football.
Mhm.
They don't have wrestling teams. They got rid of their wrestling teams quite a few years ago.
Yeah, they used to. Clemson, Tennessee, right? They used to have those varsity sports.
Yep. They're also Division One NCWA teams. It's pretty cool to see their logos on those singlets because you don't see them like in college or in NCAA wrestling. But the NCWA, they're Division One schools for the NCWA, and their teams are their varsity teams, and they're really good. Um, some notable teams are like Central Florida was a powerhouse in the NCWA. they they're really good NCWA team. Liberty University is extremely good NCWA Division One school. But so for us guys at Ohio State, where we do have a varsity team, we're Division Two NCWA, and that opportunity is also out there for us because even though we're in a different division, we all compete at the same nationals. There's no Division One, Division Two nationals. We all compete against each other. And last year, Ohio State Wrestling Club, we finished third place for the first. We had our first team placing in our club history in Division Two. So all those teams that have varsity, or all those colleges that have varsity teams, they're all Division Two teams, and they're all extremely competitive as well. There's a Penn State Wrestling Club. There's a Wisconsin Wrestling Club. I was friends with a lot of good guys from there. Um, there's obviously Ohio State. Um, there's so many teams out there, man, and there's well over 100 teams, and I think it approaches 200. It just depends on how many guys compete for those teams. And the big ones that you notice are the ones that have a lot of traction with their own school, which Ohio State Wrestling Club is definitely getting up there now.
And you guys would compete and can compete in opens. So you can compete against NCAA wrestlers. I see it a lot at the beginning of the year in a lot of these opens, Mount Union Open. I know you went to that one several times, if not all 4 years, right?
Yep.
So you would wrestle against D3 guys and in opens, it's D2 guys and Division One guys, right?
Yeah. The biggest the biggest selling point, the biggest opportunity for me was I wanted to be super competitive. Like I'm very competitive by nature, and I didn't. When I tried to walk onto the varsity, and I got cut from the varsity. I still wanted to compete at a high level, and I was able to participate in open tournaments with the backups from Ohio State's varsity. And actually, me and Zach Steiner, who is a backup for Ohio State right now, we actually ended up crossing paths in the bracket, and he edged me out by I think 1 or 2 points. So, um, but yeah, I think one of the biggest selling points for me for competing in the NCWA was I got to go to those open tournaments and compete with, I mean, quality talent from Division I schools, Division II schools, Division III schools, and also like JUCO schools and NAIA schools. It's not just other clubs that we compete with. We go to open tournaments, and we get all levels of competition, and some very high level competition. And it getting to go to those tournaments with the backups on the varsity for Ohio State kind of speaks to what kind of tournaments you're going to. Like they're a lot of talented kids there.
Yeah, it's not just backups; it's the red shirts. So it's the future, some of the future starters that are being redshirted, and they're going to these open tournaments too.
Yeah, like I remember seeing one of the Decaters there.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy Sasso was there, and I think when I saw him, at least he wasn't competing; he was actually helping coach with Jaggers. And I mean, Malik actually. I think he was competing at some of the opens that I went to. But yeah, man, I mean, they're all those redshirt guys and the backups are going to those tournaments, and they're extremely competitive. And the club wrestling team, being a part of the NCWA, we had those opportunities as well. So those opportunities are open to guys who want to be extremely competitive. It's not just D1 or bust. Like we're there with them. Like we're there with them at those tournaments, at those opens.
And now those same opportunities are afforded to the newly formed women's club team, right?
Yeah, the NCWA actually is I think spearheading the like women's wrestling, that we have like they have their own national tournament alongside with us as a part of the NCWA, and there's full women's teams competing in that national tournament. I think if I remember right, I think Florida has a great team. And there's a lot of other like great women's teams that compete in that tournament, and they have their own national tournament, and their placement matches are right alongside the men's placement matches in the national tournament. And the NCWA is doing a great job spearheading like that opportunity to grow women's wrestling as well. So it's awesome. It's great.
So to summarize the point that I keep trying to drive home, opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. It's rampant. If you decide academically on a school, make sure you check to see if there's a club team in that school. And guess what? If there isn't, you can start one, right?
Yeah, you can start one. I mean, some of when we started out as a student organization and not an official club sport at Ohio State, we did our own fundraising, and we started one. Like we really got the ball rolling. We started our own GoFundMe. We raised some money in that way. We partnered with like Chipotle and had like nights where we would some of the proceeds would go to our program. So and we even got the support of some donors. Um, I mean, there were talks. Like I said, Tom Ryan was in connection with my coach, Coach David Rourke, and they were in talks of getting some donations from some varsity donors. Uh, I mean, the opportunity is there, and if it's not, you can create one at your own school. And the NCWA, I mean, they've been spearheading women's wrestling and growing that, and I think they have big goals of growing wrestling as a whole. So I
Mhm.
mean, they're opening new clubs with with open arms, and it's awesome. It's great.
What what's it like at that level to be, you all American, you're obviously all 4 years. So your freshman year, you were the first freshman All American on the club team. What's your experience like? I talked to you about the Schottenstein Center, and I know that from being there. What's your experience like in Allen, Texas at the national tournament?
Ooh, it, it's it's crazy because after experiencing that feeling from senior year of high school, and unfortunately, like, well, not unfortunately, my first time going to the state tournament was my senior year, and I thought that was the only time that I was going to be experiencing that big stage. And after I fell just short of placing and being as competitive as I am, I wanted to do that again. Like, and when I found the opportunity by chance at Ohio State, uh, I took it. And Allen, Texas, I mean, going to the state tournament and then going to Allen, Texas, they're pretty similar, man.
Hmm.
It's the NCWA national tournament is no joke, especially when you get into those top 10 seeds for each weight class. Those are, I mean, those are really really good guys and great competition. Allen, Texas is really special, and it's another shell shock, honestly.
Hmm.
When you step out there, there's I believe there's a dozen mats on the floor, and you're
Hmm.
competing in an arena, and you got the banners all over. Very similar to being in the Schottenstein, and you got all eyes on you. I'm not going to forget any of those experiences, and I can recall each one from my senior year of high school to my senior year of college. I can recall all those times I was in the one time I was in the Schottenstein, and then the four times I was in Allen, Texas. I mean, they're great experiences I'm never going to forget.
So you graduated? You're a grad student still, or you're done?
I'm done. I'm done with my
Okay.
undergrad. Yeah.
Yep. And what are you doing now? You're a pharmacy tech, is that right?
Yep. Pharmacy technician at Ohio State. I actually worked as a student at Ohio State, had a great student job, and I kind of got the job from within, and it's been great. I work at the Wexner Medical Center as a outpatient pharmacy technician, and it's been awesome. It's working at Ohio State's great. Competing, like, doing my undergrad at Ohio State was great. Competing at Ohio State was great, and now I'm working at Ohio State, and it's uh it's been rewarding. Like, all the years I've been there, so it's going well.
So you still have a role with the club though. You're helping the coach. Are you doing what else is your role with the club?
Yeah, I think as far as I actually had to do some stuff as far as studying goes for like my new job as a pharmacy tech. I had to do a ton of hours of studying for a certification. And so this winter, I was, as often as I could, stopping into the room to kind of roll around with those guys and help out my coach. While I wasn't an official coach, I just kind of, stopped in and got to roll around with those guys. And I have old teammates that are still there. So, and they're now leading the club, which is great to see. And yeah, that was my role with the club now this year. And I hope to be growing it a little bit next year and see maybe kind of going to some of the opens with them, maybe, and being some of those guys as corners. So That's how I'm helping out with the club right now.
All right. So speak to the current Ohio State student that has no idea that this club exists. Give them your best elevator speech on joining the Ohio State Wrestling Club.
Yeah, I mean, we the Ohio State Wrestling Club, we accept all skill levels. You could be a brand new wrestler and you could want to come out and learn a few things, or you could be a 4-time state champion. And we got guys that are gonna make you compete in there. And our coach, Dave Rourke, he is truly one of the most knowledgeable coaches that I've ever been under. And he kind of fell into the club the same way, where the style of the club and the time commitment of the club really fit his life as well. The club is for everyone. It's for all skill levels, all competition levels. Like I said earlier, you could make the most of it like I did and compete every weekend of the winter, truly make it a true wrestling season, or you could come in, twice a semester. You come in once a semester and we would never see you again, but we would welcome you with open arms and have you roll around with those guys, because we've had all sorts of people come in, and as well as women's wrestling too. We've had girls come into our room as well, and they mix it up with the guys, and it's a great club environment. It's awesome.
All right, Kyler. So what else do you have for us tonight?
I think really one of the last things I got for you is just letting all those guys know, whoever's listening to the podcast tonight. I would just say like that opportunity is out there. There are so many different paths. We keep talking about D1 or bust. There's so many different paths to doing the things you want to do, especially in with wrestling. And the club route was my path, and I think that there's dozens and dozens more people out there and kids out there that want to be doing the same thing that I did, that have no clue that this opportunity is out there. And I just want to let everyone know that it's out there. And if your school doesn't have it, you can, like we were talking about earlier, you can create one. So it's there. It's that love for the sport didn't fade for me, and I got to keep it going, and it's extremely special. So go find that opportunity, or go make that opportunity.
All right. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, Kyler, what has wrestling done for you?
Oh man, it sounds kind of cliche, but everything. I think my mindset, my physical, emotional, spiritual, mental toughness, and like resilience, largely stems from wrestling. It's wrestling is just something that I'm gonna love for the rest of my life, and I'm never gonna forget the days that I competed. And I am officially retired now, but wrestling has done everything for me, and and I hope it's that special for a lot of people listening to this podcast, because it means a lot to me, and it's done a lot for me. So,
all right, there will be a lot of people listening to this podcast, but between you and me, I want 3 others to not listen to this podcast, because I'm about to tell you that although you're the smallest of all the twins, that you are the best wrestler, and you could whoop the other 3 right now, anytime, anywhere. And don't tell them I said that.
Okay, man, sounds good.
All right, Kyler, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate the time. I really love the story. I've been watching you for a long time, so I'm glad you took the time to talk to us tonight. Thanks, Kyler.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's great talking to you. Great being here.